Hi. Okay, I think I don't need that cord, so I'll just ignore it, but we'll find out. I'm here to talk to you today about D&D, or Dungeons and Dragons, and how that can make you a better software developer. Before we get into Dungeons and Dragons and how that is going to make us better developers, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm Rissa Jackson. I'm a full-stack software developer. I'm an international speaker. In fact, this talk right now completes all the Laracons for me. So I've just done a Grand Slam in 1 year. Thank you. Technically, Daniel is also doing a Grand Slam, but he's on after me, so I think I win. I'm really into acro, board games, dancing, and of course, Dungeons and Dragons. Our agenda for today. So we're going to be talking about what is D&D, communication, problem solving, leadership, health. We'll also be talking about being a dungeon master and how that can be useful. Why am I talking about D&D? What's the point? How to be a polymath and what that is, and conclusions. All right, what is Dungeons and Dragons? Now, maybe a bunch of you already know about it. There's a lot of nerds in this room, so you might already know. But in case you don't know what it is, this is a game that's been around since 1974. It's a tabletop role-playing game, or RPG. And in its most basic form, you have a dungeon master or a DM, and they're in charge of the world, the story, the rules, making sure that the players are doing things that they're allowed to do, and they're going to be in charge of the characters you talk to that are not the players, so the non-playable characters. They're going to be in charge of the enemies, so the DM is not necessarily your friend. And then you have the adventurers, usually 2 to 8 people, maybe more if you want a really big, wild game. And your adventurers are going to have character sheets. Now, I know this is not the easiest to read, so don't worry about looking too closely at it. But this is just an example of a character sheet you would have. It's going to have things like your race, your class. For example, race would be something like an elf. And a class could be something like a wizard or a druid. And you're also going to have skill points that are going to be in different skills. Skills like strength or dexterity or charisma. And you have to kind of decide what's useful for your character. If you're a wizard, you're going to want high intelligence. If you're a fighter, maybe you want high strength. And SpongeBob gave us a very good look at what a game could look like. You have maybe a map and a little outline of a dungeon. There's some minis on the board. We have some dice near Mr. Krabs. Costumes are not necessary, but they do make things more fun. We've got a nice DM screen. And very important for a good game is you have to have dice. It's what allows you to know whether you achieved your goals, whether you did damage to kill the enemy. Your most important dice is the one in the middle. It's a D20 or a 20-sided dice. And that one is what determines your fate in the game. Okay, so now we kind of have a foundation of what Dungeons and Dragons is. Maybe you don't know it perfectly, but you have an idea of what's going on there. How does it help being a developer? Well, first and foremost, I think of communication. As developers, we need to be able to communicate with stakeholders, designers, with the product manager. We have to talk to a lot of people, and sometimes that can be draining because we have to make stuff too, but being good at communicating, especially talking to non-technical people, can really help you advance in your career. In D&D, we're constantly communicating. It involves multiple people, and we have to talk about what we're doing. We have to collaborate. We have to plan how we're going to handle situations. We have to do conflict resolution. Maybe you're playing a game and a little boy has been stolen by some goblins. You have to figure out how are you going to get him back. Also, we're going to be doing a ton of problem solving in the game. So in D&D, you're going to have something that is going to cause conflict. Like I said, the little boy is stolen by the goblins. This is conflict. This is a problem we have to solve. So how can we solve it? We have to use some creativity and imagination. Maybe we think we could smoke out the goblins, and that's one way to handle it. Another way could be maybe of high charisma. Maybe you can talk them out of keeping the boy. Who knows? There's lots of options. And you get to think of the trade-offs of these things. How is this action going to affect other actions? You have to think about time management, which as developers, we're very aware that there is deadlines, whether or not we come up with them, and so we have to be pretty aware of time management. We'll also have to think about risk assessment. So maybe your idea is we're going to smoke out these goblins, but the issue could be that maybe you hurt the boy as well. So you really have to think about the trade-offs and the risk assessment of your plans. You need to think about resource management. Do you have enough spell scrolls? Do you have enough health potions? Do you have enough spell slots? Those things can go real fast, and that can be a big problem. You also need to keep learning as an adventurer. It's really helpful to read up on what spells are out there, read character guides, see what other people have done that's been really effective. And as developers, we're pretty good at reading docs and continuous learning. It also gives you an opportunity for some lateral thinking. So lateral thinking is different from vertical thinking. Vertical thinking is, here you are, there's the problem, you're trying to get directly to the solution and fix the problem. Lateral thinking is a bit more creative. It was developed in the 1960s by Edward de Bono, and it's giving you an opportunity to do some brainstorming, to throw out some random ideas, to break down assumptions, maybe be a bit more provocative with your ideas or explorative, maybe take some risks with your ideas. This can be really helpful for developers because some solutions have a very straightforward fix. Maybe it needs a for loop. Okay, great, check that off. But a lot of problems have multiple solutions, and they have creative solutions that are going to work better or worse. So it's good to be able to think in different ways. There's also a great opportunity for leadership with Dungeons & Dragons, and it's a very low-stakes way to try being a leader. You get to make the decisions for the group, potentially, maybe come up with a plan. You'll notice that whenever you execute a plan, that things are going to happen that you didn't expect, and you're going to have to adapt and change the plan and have some flexibility. All of these are fantastic skills for a leader to have. So if you're interested in being a lead developer, this could be a great way to try it out. There's also some fantastic health benefits that can be great for developers. So we spend so much time on screens and a lot of time sitting unless you have a standing setup. And D&D gives you the opportunity to play with other people without a screen. Unless you're playing remotely, I have played D&D on Roll20, so there are ways to bring a screen back in. But most of the time I've played in person. You have pen and paper, you have dice. It's a very great way to keep you in the moment and help you connect with people. It also can be helpful for avoiding burnout. If you have a hard day of work, it can be a really nice way to unwind, have some beers, laugh with your friends. It can be a really helpful way to de-stress. Speaking of hanging out with friends, a big part of D&D is spending time with other people. You cannot play by yourself. You have to have other people around you. And that can be an opportunity to build some really fantastic friendships, build a great community. I was part of a game for over a year, and we still to this day talk about some of our favorite moments, the really wild moments where something silly happened. And it's a really fun way to just connect with people and have that shared experience. There's also an amazing community for Dungeons & Dragons. There's amazing podcasts, shows, there's memes, there's a whole culture that you can jump in on and connect with people online and in person. And one of my favorite podcasts is called Dungeons and Daddies. It's not a BDSM podcast. The premise of this podcast, I'm not shilling for them because they don't give me any money, but I do like it. So the premise is that it's these suburban dad archetypes, and they're just thrown into this fantasy world to go rescue their sons. So you have like the football coach dad, who's the barbarian. You have the granola Birkenstock wearing dad, and he's a druid. You have the rocker dad, and he is the bard, of course. It's a really fun time. And anytime any of them make a dad joke, everyone else gets psychic damage. It's a really great part of it. Okay, another benefit for health is being able to diversify your stats. So we looked at this character sheet earlier, and there's different stats. There's intelligence, strength, dexterity. And some people think like, oh, I'm just gonna like dump all my stats into strength. I'm gonna be super strong, it's gonna be really great. But then that can cause some problems. If you are super strong and you don't have any dexterity, you're going to be not stealthy at all. You're constantly gonna let people know where you are. And you're gonna be terrible at traps, you're gonna be terrible at talking your way out of things. So that could really unbalance you as a character. And sometimes that can be a fun challenge, but most of the time you want to have a little bit more diversity of your stats. And I feel like this is relevant to us as developers because, you know, we are obviously good at programming, but it's also good to make sure that we're putting some of our stat points in other skills so that we're also diversifying our stats. So you could put all of your points in strength. It could be a fun game, but that might not be the best way to play. Okay, so we've talked a lot about how D&D can be helpful as a player, but what about the benefits of being a dungeon master? There we go. Being the dungeon master gives you the opportunity to build a world, create a story. It's a really fun way to be creative. You get to coordinate between competing interests. Like I said, the DM is not on the player's side. They are in charge of the enemies, and the enemies are trying to kill the party. But the DM also wants the party to have a good time. You don't want to have too many total party knockouts, so you gotta pull some punches occasionally. A good GM also knows that there is a great open source world to build off of. You don't need to recreate the wheel. There are so many campaigns out there, so many tools. There are tools where they can give you a random name if you can't think of an NPC name. There are tools that will tell you what are good magic items for the party level you're working with. Definitely build off of this work and maybe contribute to it if you really enjoy it. And as developers, we're really good at working with open source. And then as a DM, I'm constantly iterating. Every time I do a session, I'm thinking, maybe this didn't work quite as well, maybe I could do this a little bit better. And that's a thing that we're really familiar with as developers too, iteration. A fun thing to think about as a DM is consequences. There's ripples for your party's actions. So maybe you have a group and they just murder everything they see, and you're just like, okay, that's kind of the party we're gonna have. If they're doing that, there are consequences in this world you've created. Maybe, they get to a town and the town doesn't want to sell them anything. Maybe there are wanted posters up for them. Maybe, they are just having a harder time and they maybe even get arrested. A good DM needs to think about the consequences of actions. And similar with our code, when we move stuff around, what are the consequences for that? We also want to think about the user experience. Like I said, the DM wants the players to have a good time. Even if they're not on their side, they want to challenge them, but they want them to have fun. And we want to think about that when we're coding. How is the end user going to have a good experience? So there are two main ways to run a story. There's a Rails way and a sandbox way. Rails is kind of like train tracks. You're taking your players down this predetermined path. There's a very clear beginning and ending that you're leading them towards. Another option is a sandbox world. You just put them out into the world and let them play around, see where they go. There's a lot of creativity for a sandbox world. Most games are either one or the other or some mix of both. I usually like a mix of both because it's good to work towards something, but have creativity for fun moments. I like to think about this when I'm making an app. How do I want the user to interact with my code? Do I want them to go down a predetermined path in a very specific way? Or do I want to give them this sandbox that they can just play around with? Another good part of being a DM is understanding good team dynamics. A really poor team is one where you have only fighters. That team is going to be great at killing monsters, but they're going to be terrible at other things. We've already talked about they're not going to be stealthy, they're not going to be good at traps. And so a good DM might recommend, let's get some different types of characters involved. Let's get maybe a druid, or maybe some kind of spellcaster, maybe someone who can heal the party in case they are all dying. With software, it's also great to have a variety of skills for your team. You can kind of find out on a team like, oh, that person is really good at regex. Oh, that person's really good at CSS. They can always center the div. You you kind of figure out who to go to for these things, and then that makes the team better and stronger. So you want to take that skill of seeing a good team and bring that to software. Another opportunity as a DM is being adaptable. Your players are going to do the weirdest stuff that you would never imagine with your story, and you have to go along with it. One of my favorite moments in Critical Role is when Matt Mercer, the DM, had a plan for his session, and one of the characters gave a different character a love potion. And as the consequences of this love potion are unfolding, Matt Mercer just tears up his plans for the session because he knows they're not moving on to them. This is going to be all about this potion. And it's a fantastic episode, super funny, and it was worth it. He did a great job as a DM. He went with where the players went, and it didn't matter that he had plans. That can wait for another session. So as a good DM, you have to be adaptable. And I think we all know that end users are going to use our code in ways that we never imagined. Any QA person can tell you that. Also, an important aspect of being a DM is respecting the rule of cool. So occasionally, we need to rein the players in and let them know, that's not quite how the rules work. You can't just do whatever you want. But occasionally, you want to bend those rules a little bit, give a little wiggle room because of the rule of cool. Again, we want a good experience. And I think about this with design. Can I add some animation to make this a little bit more fun or cool or exciting of an app? So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, why am I talking to you about Dungeons and Dragons? Well, I'm talking to you about Dungeons and Dragons because it's fun. Also, we're nerds, like I said. We're all programmers. So we're definitely nerds. Even if your style of nerdy is different than mine, we're still nerds. And very importantly, Taylor Otwell likes Dungeons and Dragons. I was very motivated to be able to get on this stage to complete the Grand Slam, and so I threw Taylor so many options. I was like, what about this, and this, and this? And I was like, you know what, Taylor likes D&D. I'll throw him a D&D talk and just see what happens. And thankfully, he picked it. So part of being a good DM or just a good conference speaker is knowing your audience. So thanks, Taylor. Sorry if you get a lot of talk proposals with D&D now. And what's the grand theme? What's the big point of this whole talk? Well, the point is that we are multifaceted human beings. We love to program. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. But we also love other things. I love when I come to these conferences and I'm talking to people and I hear about the other things that you love to do also. And this could just be something you could try. No worries if D&D is not for you, but what about a different hobby if that's not the one? We've covered that D&D could help you be better at your job, it could give you better health, and it could even help you become a polymath. What is a polymath? Thank you for asking. Leonardo da Vinci is a polymath. It means many learning. I thought it was many math, and I was very confused by that definition, but no, it's many learning. And basically, it is people who are very good at very different topics. So Da Vinci was obviously an incredible artist, but he was also an incredible engineer. And so you see an example in this drawing of his artistic skills and his engineering skills coming together. That's kind of what a polymath is capable of doing. And there's some pretty incredible polymaths in history. Of the 20 greatest scientists that they surveyed, or that they looked into history for, 15 of them were polymaths. And of the 5 largest companies that currently exist, all of the founders are polymaths. So being a polymath is really beneficial and can be a really great way to succeed. So we got Newton, who's a polymath, Faraday, Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, and I'm gonna say Newton has the best hair in this lineup. Okay, so some of the benefits of being a polymath are you're able to take cross-disciplinary insight. So like I said with Da Vinci, he could take his artistic skills and combine it with his engineering skills. They're constantly learning, they're learning about different topics, they are adaptable, they're creative, they're versatile, they have great communication skills, great problem-solving skills, and they have great career opportunities. I don't know about you, but I'm looking at this list and there's so much that is relevant as a developer. Continuous learning, creativity, communication, problem-solving skills. These are really relevant to our work. So this is a great thing to aim for, and who doesn't want good career opportunities? Okay, so hopefully I've given you a little bit more interest in trying Dungeons & Dragons if you haven't already. Just know if you tried it before and it wasn't a good fit, it's really dependent on who you're working with. So maybe try again with a different group and see if that's a better fit for you. It can be so different depending on the DM and the players. And also the goals can really make a massive difference. So I was talking to one person and they were wanting to try out one session, and the DM they were playing with wanted to do like multi-year campaign. Obviously those goals are not compatible. So make sure that if you ever play that you are on the same page as everyone. But if you're like, look, I get it, but I'm not interested in D&D, that's totally fine, because if we all liked the same things, it would be a very boring world. But maybe there are other hobbies that you can look into and use to make yourself a better developer. Hobbies like social dance, partner acrobatics, I'm a little biased because I love those, woodworking, leatherworking, knitting, pottery. There's hundreds and thousands of hobbies out there. And I get it, you're like, Rissa, I have kids, I don't have time for hobbies. Okay, that's fair, that's fair. I don't have kids, I have more free time probably than all of you, definitely more free time than Aaron Francis. But maybe you could get your kids involved in a hobby. Maybe you could play some board games with your kids. Maybe if they're old enough, you could play D&D with your kids. There's so many fun things that you could do to spend family time with your family and have fun with hobbies. So don't discount it even if you have kids. Think of it as cross-training. So I'm an athlete, so I can definitely talk about this. This is me doing a handstand on my partner acrobatics, if you were curious what that is. And partner acrobatics is a great way to be working out, physically fit, but it is a lot of pushing strength. I'm pushing into the partner. I'm not pulling on them usually. And so if I only do that, I'm gonna be really strong in pushing and really weak in pulling. A really great way for me to cross-train is to do rock climbing, because then it has a ton of pulling and no like pushing practically. So I'm cross-training by doing different activities. And if you're ever playing Dungeons & Dragons, you can just think like while you're rolling the dice, I'm cross-training for software. All right, we've gotten to basically the end, our conclusion. Dungeons and Dragons and hobbies can make us better developers, but they can also make us better and more fulfilled humans. So go out there and have some fun. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Great job. What makes you think I don't have any time?
Well, I was thinking the 2 sets of twins.
The 2 sets of twins.
Yes.
Yes, that does it.
Sounded like not much time.
Correct. First of all, congrats on completing the Grand Slam.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done, Rissa. Second, I'm very glad you brought up the kids thing. So you said, oh yeah, I had a campaign that lasted a year, and backstage I'm like, nope, can't do that. So here's my question.
Yep.
Is there, maybe it's a different board game, is there an easier on-ramp? I like board games. I cannot play a board game for 1 year. So I am very impressed and inspired by how you spend your time outside of work. So what's another option for a board game that a normie with 1 million children can play?
A normie with 1 million children, okay. So first I want to mention that you could just do a one-off session, like one session for D&D. You know, you get a babysitter.
Okay,
play
love it already.
D&D, and then it's over.
Okay.
So that is one option, and that can be a great way to try it out. Another option is there are so many types of board games, and there are some really simple ones. Okay, this is some backstory about me. Every event that I'm at, I have games in my purse, and the speakers are starting to realize that. So I end up usually playing games at like all the Laracons. But I have games in there that I could teach you in like 1 minute. It's super easy, super fun, and they're very great travel games. So
that is my speed. You'll have to show those to me. Everybody, Rissa Jackson.
Thank you.
Good job.